o'clock. I'm going to call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of the Hollis School Board. Are there any agenda adjustments, nominations, resignations, or correspondence?
The only piece I have is building secretary at HPS resigned. Her last day will be the 8th. It's kind of a trend we're seeing. You know, we had a teacher resign at the high school Friday of last week. It's just, I think it's going to be something that we deal with, which is unexpected and not typical of the profession, but it's just, I think.
Are they getting poached?
Some of them
That has a negative connotation, but
Yeah.
you know what I mean.
They're
Other
going back to
districts are really
industry.
trying to find-
Yeah, so it is a money issue. Yeah. But it's a money issue that we couldn't contend with, because we can contend with all the districts around us because our contract is that good, but not to go to the private sector.
Okay.
So is that the secretary that sits in the front and answers was it Stephanie or was it, I don't know the other one, the other secretary?
It's the
Who was
brand new
in-
secretary.
The brand new one.
Right.
Okay, so what's our plan?
Well, we actually have filled the position.
Oh, great, okay.
So
Right, that was quick.
Well,
Way to bury your head on it, Andy.
On with that.
well, we're still onboarding, but the
Okay.
position is filled, and we
Okay.
expect that when one transitions out, it'll be very seamless.
Okay.
Awesome.
So
But Stephanie's still with us.
Stephanie still with
Yes,
us.
okay,
That's big.
good.
Yep.
She's tremendous.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
So,
Anything else on that
nope.
topic?
That's
Okay.
it.
Andy, just on the comment that you made, because I'm hearing it in other places, we seem to be, over the last several years, competing heavily with private industry.
Yes.
It's not a small matter.
No, and it's not just
And it
math.
preceded the pandemic, but it seems to be getting
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah, and it's not just math and science like it traditionally was. Now it's the skill set of an educator is highly sought after.
The civilizing factor. Okay.
Okay, moving on to approval of minutes.
Okay, let me see if I can navigate board docs here. So I'd like to move to accept the minutes of the public Hollis School Board meeting of August 2, 2023 with the following amendment, page 5, line 14 and 15, quote, occupational therapy, close quote, does not need to be initially capitalized. So that was the only correction that I have.
May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? Seeing none? Okay. All in favor? Okay. Opposed? Abstained? Great. 401. Thank you. And that was our only minutes, our only set of minutes. Okay. At this point, I will open public input. I'm not seeing anyone here, but we will allow public input to be open until 6:30. Okay, moving on to our discussion items, the principal's reports.
I want to thank Candy and Paula for providing the report that's in your packet. The year actually started the day before we opened with a number of students and their families coming down to color with chalk. And it's funny because I was here and I got to see all that excitement, but that tradition that was started here resulted in a new tradition at the high school where parents showed up and decorated their child's parking space with chalk and everything.
Very
And that hadn't happened for our seniors. And it was really quite impactful, and it wasn't just a couple. It was like the whole place was decorated.
Those
So
drone photos were awesome.
They really were. Yeah.
I've seen that happen at other high schools where they actually get to paint their spot so it stays longer than chalk.
Yeah.
I would love to see that.
Yeah, it was quite an amazing night. And I really compliment all the kids and their families.
Fun.
September 13th is Picture Day, just for everybody at home that might be following along. Hughes Open House is September 13th from 5:45 to 7:50. HPS's Open House is September 14th from 5:30 to 7. And then September 29th is Hughes Pictures Day. The buildings, I can't thank Lance, Ben, and the custodial staff at both buildings enough. They're in phenomenal shape. If you remember a month ago when we sat here, we still had dirt on many of the floors as we were still working on bathrooms, except for the one bathroom that we knew about because of the asbestos we discovered this summer. We're up and running. We are at what I call the punch list stage, so we're working with that, and I expect probably the next 2 or 3 weeks, everybody will be cleared out, but we have a very minimal crew, and they use a separate entrance. They have separate bathroom facilities outside the building for them, and obviously they've all been criminally background checked during the summer. And the person who coordinates for Touchstone, our vendor, has done an outstanding job all summer long, so I really have no qualms. In HPS, Paula provided you some wonderful pictures. The third grade hallway came out spectacular. You can see the new first grade sinks and counters. Each of those is now ADA compliant. Bathrooms came out spectacular. We have tile bathrooms, all handicapped accessible. And yes, it went right down to the wire, which it has for every project we've done. But we opened. I got a few more grays out of it. But I do have to thank everybody who came in and really did the final cleaning. As Paula said to me, from when she left at 4 o'clock that Wednesday until Thursday morning when we officially opened, the custodial crew just did an amazing job. So really kudos to them. In terms of staffing, I'm going to cover that in a couple minutes, but they did update you on a couple pieces there. Hughes has registered 10 new students this summer, and our enrollment at HPS is bulging at the seams. So we know there's still more building going on, so we'll be discussing potentially like an enrollment committee in the future, just trying to figure out and look at that. What are some of our alternatives? Because I don't think it's a sustained enrollment. I think it's going to be a multi-year bubble, but it really will balance out. Do you build something that will be empty space, or do you figure out solutions that will get you through the bubble? So we'll look at both those options coming up. And that was it from our principals, and I do want to thank them. It has just been a wonderful opening. I've heard so many positives from parents, and just to coordinate drop-off and dismissal, those first couple days, it's an adventure. So watching the little ones try to figure out where the conference room door is versus the
Like, what's a conference room?
exactly. It's and all the adults that are there to make it happen. But now here we sit today. I mean, we had all buses. The last bus had left Hughes at 3:28. So to give you an idea, to move about 600 kids in probably about 32 minutes is quite a feat.
Yeah,
You know?
it's impressive.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions on the principal's report?
Now, I'm glad you brought up the enrollment committee stuff. Ann and I were discussing it before the meeting began. It's needed, looking at 5 first grade students enrolling since our last meeting at the beginning of August. That's tremendous.
Yeah, we're going to have to look at that. The other place where we're seeing a large influx that I do think will stay with us is our self-contained special education programming. I think a lot of parents are, when they're looking at the surrounding communities and choosing where they want to live, are looking at that as a potential draw. And that takes a lot of space. If you went back 15 years ago, you wouldn't have had those self-contained programs, so you would probably have 3 or 4 more classrooms that would be opened up. So there are a number of factors we have to look at. There are a variety of alternatives from, we could look at grade configurations at each building. We can look at, portable classrooms for a period of time. So we'll end up going through everything, but I think we'll put that together probably in October and kind of give us a little time to figure out. I don't think there'll be much of a huge impact this year, but the numbers that we're seeing, I think, are going to continue for the next, 2 to 3 years, which are going to be problematic at some point.
Yeah. Looking at the numbers of the classes sizes in grade 1, we have a class size per district policy of 18, and those classes, all 5 of them are over, one of them 3 kids over.
Right.
What is our current plan? Do we have paras in place there? Are we in need of having another first grade classroom this year?
Well, in talking with Paula, who had talked with the teachers, the concern is the teaching staff, the quality of applicants. So to bring in a new teacher or somebody who's out there now,
At this point,
we feel very confident that those numbers are higher than we like. And we will continue to look to see if there's somebody out there that will be able to join us at some point who may be able to go into each of the rooms during the course of the day. We've done that before. We just need the dust to settle with hiring. As Gina and I were just looking, there are still so many districts looking that people that are on our sub list, or even some of our paras, are probably might going to see them leave because they may get a full-time teaching position. Yeah.
Good. Well, I'm glad they're feeling confident
Yep.
in being able to cover it. Just keep us posted on that,
Yep,
please.
absolutely.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Since you brought up the self-contained classroom, not classroom, the self-contained special ed program, I just always have to throw in the footnote that you usually do, which is that when we are able to provide all the services for students who've been identified by their teams and by the professionals in the field, and we're able to keep them at home in the buildings, it's usually a lot cheaper, and it's absolutely a lot better for the students. So when we see those costs, we have to remember that there's an opportunity cost that's much higher if we were to have to send them out of district like we always used to in the very old days.
Correct.
This is actually much better, even though it does put some pressure on the facilities.
I think the biggest piece that I've seen is the learning they get from their peers.
Absolutely.
And because they're in our buildings and they become friends with non-handicapped peers, those relationships continue after hours. So there's even more role modeling that goes on. So when a family meets another family at the playground, say, that child is now welcomed because the kids know each other, and they take away so many different life lessons and social skills.
And the fact remains, they are members of our community, 100% like the most academically talented,
Right.
and they belong here. But just as a matter of taxpayer responsibility, it tends to be a lot cheaper to keep students who need special services in district. So even if it sometimes looks more expensive in the operating budget because they're in district, it overall saves tax money because we're not sending them out of district. They belong here, and it's just all a win-win.
Right, well said,
Yeah.
well said. I'll move on with the board's permission
Yeah,
to the
sure.
building project update. We are very excited with the progress, and I don't want to forget to thank staff. From, call it about 8 days before school opened, to the opening of school, we had to figure out ways so staff could start to set up their classrooms, so that it was going to be the environment we wanted a child to walk into. And our teachers were phenomenal. They came in, they knew there'd be construction people here, they knew their custodians would be in and out cleaning their rooms and still making them dirty at times. But you would have never known that when we opened up. I mean, if you were a new kindergartner, you entered you wouldn't have known the difference. In the first grade, those teachers, because they probably got their rooms back the latest, because they were getting the bathrooms and the new sinks. So there was a lot of work there. So I really can't thank them enough and commend them enough for all their efforts, because it wasn't as easy as they made it look. It just happened.
Most of their work isn't.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And our bathrooms are done, except for the one, just for the community out there. When we first started this project, we chose a particular bathroom, which was the basement of the second grade wing, to start there, because we knew that was going to be the most problematic. That turned out absolutely right, because unexpectedly in that bathroom, even though we knew there were some problems, we didn't know we were going to encounter asbestos. So that was all abated and removed professionally this summer. So that is the only bathroom that is still under construction. What has happened, and you can easily see it later if you'd like, but we're walled off the two entrances, and we're actually going in through what used to be the boiler room, because the boiler room has been eliminated because that bathroom is gaining space. And all of our bathrooms became larger, and all of them are now handicapped accessible. And they just really, I can't thank the workers enough. They did just a tremendous job. All our kitchen is in. We are doing the final inspections on that. The Hollis Fire Department has been through. They are thrilled with the new kitchen setups because of the safety of that equipment, and the automatic shut-offs and everything that are in there now make us such a much safer, kitchen area. I also want to thank Amy Cassidy and her staff because they are just knocking it out of the park, responding to lunches. And again, you're talking about a group of children, many of them who have, are learning what lunch is. All that kindergarten, the whole procedures, getting your milks, how we throw away, because we don't have any waste. Everything is composted because of Mrs. Happy's program, so that's all up and running. So again, the building looks great, and you'll see when we walk through the budget a little later on tonight, we've got a couple more projects for next summer. But that's the only way we can do it, because we only have that 10-week window. And we needed every inch of the 10 weeks this year.
Can I, sorry to keep piggybacking on what you say, Andy, it's just, you make me think of things that I feel other board members and the public should recognize. We knew going into this summer with this, it's not really 10 weeks once the teachers are out, and it's really closer to 9 weeks. That's one of the reasons we've segmented these building renovations over the years, is we have to shoehorn them into the summers. The thing that our bathroom construction folks discovered 2 weeks ago that completely unexpected is the reason that the drain in this bathroom that's still not finished wasn't draining is that the two pipes underneath the floor, one of them makes a U-turn and never touches the drain, and the other one is plugged, and there is no connection. This drain pipe from probably the 1970s drain tile is sitting on top of dirt with two rotten 2x4s holding it up. There's nothing there. So that's not something drawings could have told them. It was only when the floor remodel, was going in that they went, why isn't the water draining from some work they were doing? And they had to open up the floor and discovered this catastrophe underneath. So we're actually quite a blessing that for all these decades, we've never had a crisis in that bathroom from a boiler in the boiler room boiling over or whatever. So that's part of why things are delayed, but we knew up front in the spring that there was going to be probably some overlap at the end of the summer, and that proved to be prescient on that side.
Thanks for giving us that explanation.
Yeah, it's good to know the details, because sometimes it's the general story just doesn't tell you the particles of it all.
And if anybody would like to walk around later and look at them, you are most welcome. The building's open. With the chair's permission, I'll go
Yes,
through.
please.
I just wanted to give you a staffing update. As I had sent out to the chair just recently, we lost a fourth grade teacher, Amy Renault, resigned. She went over to Nashua to be closer to home. We were very thrilled that Karen Kelly, some of you may remember Karen, longtime veteran teacher, math specialist, everything, has returned to that classroom to help us out. So we're very excited about that. In grade 3, we had Mrs. O'Brien move to the library, if you recall. So Bridget Phillips joined us. Bridget came in at Bachelor's Step 9. She has a elementary education from New England College. We're very excited about that. Our computer teacher, tech integrator, is Cheryl Craig. She has a Bachelor's Step 12, and she has a Bachelor's in Business Administration from Daniel Webster College. In grade 4, Laura Bluen, replacing Mrs. McElroy, who moved to environmental science. And Mrs. Bluen is at Bachelor's Step 12, and she has her education degree from Keene State. And then we hired a new case manager because Heidi Moore moved to HPS. So Allison Batty came in. Allison is at Step 16. She has a Bachelor's in Communication and her Master's in Special Education. So those were the entirety of our hires. So I'm very pleased with that. As you can see, Step 9, Step 12, Step 12, and Step 16, we were able to bring in experienced veteran people. I think that goes a long way to the efforts that the negotiation teams make, and the taxpayers have supported a very competitive contract, so it does help us to attract candidates when positions open. We are presently looking for 2 kindergarten paras and 1 full-time para. And that will be basically fully staffed when that occurs. So, and we are able to cover all our students' needs by sharing paras and scheduling, but it's not easy. but it does work. So when those two paras and the two kindergarten and the full-time para come on, it'll make life a lot easier and give a little bit of what I'll call breathing room to support teachers further. So it was a good summer of hiring, and I want to thank Paula and Candy and their committees, because Gina and I just get the end product. The two finalists come to us, and it's really fun, because at that point we've got a recommendation from the staff, and it would have to take something monumental in a reference or something like that for us not to go with the staff's choice, because these are the folks that are going to be working side by side all year long. So we were very excited by the hiring process.
Are we fully staffed for custodians and food service?
Food service is a constant turnover.
Okay.
And that's where Amy is earning her money every day. And I do believe our custodial staff, yeah, we're full staffed here today, now.
Are we still using parent volunteers to help sort of round out the food service?
We have some parents who still volunteer.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'd say it's limited in what their roles are. Because of the amount of training that goes into being a food service worker now.
It was very different, I think, pre-COVID. We
Yeah.
relied very heavily on
Yeah.
parent volunteers.
And just to give you an example, for Thursday and Friday of last week, Amy and her staff made all the food at one of our other kitchens and was transported here by facilities. Okay, just as we continue to get the kitchen set up and ready. But this Friday, the goal is to serve pizza. So that's
Best day to start.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
Friday.
Right.
That's the
They're
big.
excited. They've been talking about it.
Yeah, the kids want the pizza.
I can't wait to ask you later when we're talking about policies, does pizza fit under this new food Nazi kind of paradigm that we've been, Thrown into.
It does for
It's
me.
healthy pizza.
It's,
I will die on that. I will die on that.
yeah, yeah.
I,
That's what my children keep telling me.
So I understand that there's at least in Hughes, there's a speech path that is a position that needs to be staffed. I think there's a SLP position that's
I think
open.
we've contracted that.
Yes.
My understanding is that there is contracting, but there's limited.
I think it happened today. But I could be wrong.
Delivery.
Okay, because
I mean, it's constant.
my information is probably as recent as like maybe 2 p.m. today. But my understanding is that there's definitely like so that they're still looking to fill the position for SLP full time, right? But that the contracting isn't quite enough to fill all
Yep.
of the
So
need.
there was a contractor that was going to do evals, and then the services were going to be delivered with shared support. But I thought when I was up in HR after school today that we had found somebody to fill the actual role. I could be. No. Unless there's a change. Anyway, but I'm not 100% sure. But I mean, we are real on board.
Constantly changing, yeah.
By the every 10 minutes there's a new update on staffing, so it's hard to sort of keep it all straight. But I thought we were set at Hughes. as of
Okay.
Late this afternoon.
And I mean, to Gina's point, it is a constant merry-go-round right now.
Right.
I mean, we lost receptionist at the SAU. The person we were going to potentially hire there became Paula's replacement because that position is more critical, because that's dealing with kids. We're not at the SAU. So it's an ongoing Carrie and Jen every day. It's what are we looking for? What are we advertising for?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have maternities coming up that we're concerned about, and things of that, and unknown, yet to be determined if somebody will be ill or need a surgery or something. So it's going to be a very difficult year.
How are we doing with subs? I know you guys are just now starting to look into the pool of subs, but do we have a pool or is it a puddle?
It's a puddle,
Okay.
and the puddle basically is working right now because we also have some staff who have COVID. So, so that's the other piece that hasn't gone away, So, all that said, I want you to know it goes well. And what's happening educationally with the kids and being in the buildings is the best part of the day for us,
Can I add on to Andrea's question then, to the degree that you haven't yet, assuming you haven't yet found a permanent SLP person, are you able to bring on more contract work as the students are identified and need services? Or are we also against a wall there?
No, we can get contracted services. The other thing we do is, if we need an evaluation done, I might have the school psychologist from the co-op complete that and be paid as a contracted service. And we've done that constantly.
Yeah, the evals is one thing, and the providing the actual therapeutic
Regular,
services
yeah.
is different. I'm taking from your comments that
Ye-
that's
Yeah.
your focal concern. And
Yeah.
obviously, the evals are critically important,
Right.
and the services are critically important. So as long as we can expand our expenditures through the contracting process to meet the students' needs, we at least have a safety net.
Right. And it's not a money issue, it's a body issue. So I mean,
I
it's-
understand. It's
yeah.
just like a rock tumbler out there.
Right. So,
As far as the maternity leaves, are you talking about the SAU in general? Are you
It-
talking specifically the Hollis schools?
I'm talking SAU in general.
How are the Hollis schools being impacted by that? Are they impacted?
They are.
They'll be impacted. I don't have information to share at this time,
Okay,
but we will see some families expanding.
okay.
And that's a wonderful thing.
It is.
It is.
Wasn't there that year we had a dozen,
Oh, we've-
13 teachers across the districts that were
Oh, yeah, we've
out on
had some.
maternity? It's,
It's when you go through the turnover of retirements like we have,
Mm-hmm.
teachers tend to come in and they're in the same class and they're roughly the same age and they go through the same experience. So, it's not uncommon to have one or two, I was talking to a superintendent, Gina reminded me, 3 out of 4 second grade teachers are all out on maternity. Yeah, in their district. So,
it's
they
a
make-
show of confidence that the world is going to get better, so I'm all for it.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll keep you posted now that we have the regular meetings. The summer's a little more difficult. And what we typically do, if there's going to be a leave, you'll know there's a leave. We don't necessarily give you the reason for the leave because of HIPAA and all those pieces. And sometimes staff is more than willing to share. It's just we can't share.
Right.
Of course.
In your packet is the first take of the FY24 budget. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, what I always ask the principals to do in round one is kind of put everything and anything they can think of in there. There'll be a number of things that will move to maybe maintenance trust or a different category or simply not make it into this year's budget. But this allows us to kind of keep a historical running record of what we're looking at. We always start off with academics, and as much as possible, we try not to cut anything academically. So you see that we, with all of our new folks, we revamped our mentor program last year, and we've got some very positive feedback from new higher orientation and the buildings already. So we are just making sure that we continue to stipend those people appropriately. Math program is just up. It's, we, as you know, did a study starting last year. We'll make a final decision, and that's just a placeholder for whatever math program we go with. And as you can see, we try to break it down where possible to allocate the cost to the building. So a $40,000 math program is 20 at Hughes and 20 at HPS. We are looking and discussing and reviewing goes to codable readers. I'm not sold on that yet, but I easily could be, so that's still there. Fun Hub foundations, a teacher supply increase, and a whiteboard replacement phase round out HPS. The only difference at Hughes is they need a fire-proof file cabinet for all the different records. So those are the academic requests from the principals. When we talked earlier, it might have been June or August, we wanted to talk about the additional days for the secretary around special education, because that in itself will give a wealth of support to that department. And that person does not work summers, and it really, with ESY and everything that we now have year-round, it's something we need to look at. We do believe we already have put in a new teacher at the second grade, so that's the placeholder for that teacher. So this year we're taking out of either the budget, unretained fund balance, contingency, wherever, but that will be the money to secure that teacher. That may need to go up looking at our numbers. So that, you know, as we go into round 2 of the budget, you may see that increase. We have a shared position for a maintenance trades position. And when I say shared, that means that all 6 buildings would share the cost. So at HPS and Hughes, it would be $11,000. It's the same cost at RMMS and CSDA. And then the co-op, the middle school and high school, at $22,000 to round out that person.
But which district would employ the person?
To be determined.
Okay.
We'll determine that before we finish the budget season. And what this would be is we're seeing just a wealth of expenses around electrical and plumbing. And it's the guaranteed minimum fee for the electrician or the plumber to enter in. So we might want to add a new socket for a smart board, which is not a very expensive thing, but you're paying that minimum. So when Lance went through and looked at his expenses, we actually believe this position will be a cost savings if it ends up going through. And it may or may not make it through. It's got to get through all 3 districts to be approved. And sometimes one budget is tighter than the other, and it doesn't make it through, but we shall see. New computer equipment. We have some Chromebook carts. Those are the big things at both schools. And then some outdoor access points. Pickup patrol has gone very, very well, but we'd like to put access points outside on the building, which would give us a lot better reception for those people who maybe are in line in making a change, which sometimes happens. In terms of replacement computer equipment, we are at the point where we are looking at a new set of iPads. It's not 30 iPads per class. It's basically we buy 30 and each room gets approximately 5 or 6 as our teachers work in stations. So kids move from station to station, and when they get to the iPad station, that is set up for them there. We are on a regular replacement cycle from whiteboards to interactive flat panels. So there are 3 at HPS. And then we just need a monitor for the main office. Chromebook laptops for staff. We're moving to Chromebook laptops. We feel they're much more secure and give us all the functions we need. You see the interactive flat panels there and the monitors for the administrative staff there as well. In terms of shared services software, we have allocated a cable tester across all 6 buildings. That will give our IT department the ability to simply latch into the cable and determine where the problem is coming from instead of the hours that it can sometimes take. So that's a very effective piece. And then IT managed services, that's just an increase as we continue to combat all the different cyber attacks we get on a regular basis. This is just now kind of the new cost of doing business.
Is this a software or a person or?
It's a lot to do with the cloud-based services that we use.
Okay, so it's
And the
it's
management
an
of it.
outside contract
Correct.
Right.
type of thing?
Yep. Safety compliance issues, this is one of the areas where we put everything in, knowing full well that not everything is actually up this year. We have some windows and blinds replacement at HPS, an alarm access control update. Then we have exterior recess exit doors. We start exterior doors phase 1. Outside speakers north and south so that we have better ability for the children to hear in case we're doing a reverse evacuation drill or something of that nature. Paula has asked for those. Next, you see a radio system. This would be an SAU-wide. This is something we actually have out there in a grant, but we just wanted to make people aware. I don't think it'll make it through the budget process from any one of the 3 districts, but just trying to get people to understand one of the things eventually down the road, we do hope to get a grant. When you're in a true emergency, one of the first things to go down is a cell phone. And having these repeater radio systems would allow us direct communication, say, from the principal's office at RMMS to here and to the co-op, because we have so many families with children in each building and different things. So Kelly, we have not heard. We did submit it to the grant again this year. We were rejected last year. We might be rejected again this year. But this is actually something that I would say, from working with the local authorities in the state, we're kind of ahead of the curve on this. A lot of people are still doing their entryways, which you'll see we're now ready to do our entryway here. And
Andy, quick question about the radios. Is there any link to the communication center at the police department?
yes, it would all be tied in.
Oh, that would be huge.
It's
That would be
all tied in.
huge.
And they've been involved, police, fire, and dispatch have all been and all support the grant.
That
So
would just
this
be a
is-
huge.
So this isn't a grant that's just the
improvement.
school district, fire and police have put in, and that's why we keep trying different ones to see if, each one hits.
Gigantic.
We have in there some AC solutions for Hughes. We're not sure of the magnitude, so we've put in a very large number, and then we'll make decisions based on our work with consultants, because what we'd like to do is at least get enough spaces that on days like yesterday and today, that we could filter kids through, so they could get out of the heat.
Like cooling centers type.
Kind of cooling centers, and we have some of those now, because our computer labs and things like that are done, but we'd like to enhance that. So you could say, all 5 fifth grade classes from 10 to 11, or maybe it's when you come in from lunch or recess, because it's been very hot. And I want to, again, commend the teachers and administration. Our kids are doing a great job of kind of laying low, not overexerting, and that's very difficult with young ones. They want to get out and they
First
want to
day of
go.
school, yeah.
We need some more exterior cameras up at Hughes. We have some exterior door security renovations. And then, as you can see, the radio system there, because it's broken down by building. Facilities maintenance, we're looking at a potentially SOS heat pump for pre-K. The enrollment expansion study, would like to use an architect and have professional guidance on that. We have classroom flooring for grade 1, which is the hallway when you come in the door, which is probably our last phase, I think. We've done most of the other hallways. Classroom furniture for grade 2. We can't remember the last time we bought furniture for students. We'll be starting the staff bathrooms. Obviously, this summer we didn't do staff and student bathrooms because we needed facilities for people to function who work year-round. Heating controls, and then univent rebuild, which is something we've already done up at Hughes on many of our pieces. You see Hughes's portion of the enrollment expansion study. We'd like to power wash that building. It's been a number of years. The basketball pole set and paving, we did phase 1. We'd like to look at that. Boys' bathroom stall replacement, not necessarily the toilets and sinks, but the partitions between. So those are up. Cabinet replacement, phase 1. Classroom flooring for the mid-level. Kitchen flooring. If you've driven on Drury Lane lately, it's in need of some repair, and that's ours, that's not the town's.
That was determined for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And, but at the same time, we have worked with the town in past years, because sometimes we get a much better bid from a buying power standpoint, because typically the town has X number of roads they're gonna pave every summer, and they've always been willing to let us jump in for the materials. So we will.
I remember at least 11, maybe 12, 13 years ago, there was a big our entire paving and parking and everything was completely redone and rebuilt. If we do have, I agree, I mean, it looks pretty bad. You know, there's a creek that goes under. I think it would bear some study to figure out if we're just constantly putting money into the roadbed and not making it so that the water doesn't wash out the roadbed underneath. I'm trying to spit it out.
And Lance and his crew are gonna look at just that.
Yeah.
Is it?
Because we shouldn't have to rebuild that
Right.
driveway 12 years later.
Correct. And we've done extensive work around the culverts with new rocks and that
Right.
to try to enhance or limit the water coming across Drury Lane. So we'll know more, and these are placeholders, pretty solid placeholders, but simply placeholders this time. Classroom furniture for grade 4. We're in discussions about a building generator. I don't know if it'll make it through. We just don't have the need from a building standpoint. Where this comes from, just so the board knows, is more for our water system. Because when power goes down, water goes down. And that's kind of what we're looking at. So we want to look and see what's the right size just to keep the water running, as opposed to having our buildings up and running. Because our emergency shelter is actually in Nashua. That's priority 1. And the second one is at the high school. So we have emergency shelters for people in town should we encounter a significant snowstorm or something like that.
Do any of the other schools have such a generator?
CSDA has one, but it's not like, it doesn't run the school.
Right, for their water system, like a
Right.
comparable ask.
Yeah, it does the emergency lights, the main office lights, so if we're down without power, we can still function.
The problem is our water is the
Right.
water services we talk about all the time, and that is a massive amount of power. I mean,
Right, so that's why we're gonna look at it, but we thought it was good to get it in there, because the other thing, that sometimes is an item that will come up for grants, but if you haven't really put it in a budget, sometimes you don't get to qualify for a grant. They wanna see that you've demonstrated a need and you've looked at it, so sometimes there are quite a few reasons why things are in the budget in round 1. In terms of like what we anticipate for operating articles, warrant articles, the HESER dollar amount is there. We would have the SAU assessment estimate, maintenance trust. The new one that we'll discuss probably next month, and we're gonna have IT come in and do a presentation, is the IT trust. We, as you know, have moved to a one-to-one environment, and it's gone very well. I believe in talking with Carol, across the entire SAU, we had just 27 devices that had problems. And 16 of those they didn't come back. 9 of those showed up on day 1 this year, which happens. So we really had a very successful rate of using the machines and getting them back. At the elementary levels, especially here, they don't go out that much. But rather than see a spike in the tax rate or a large expense, IT is going to come in and talk to you about a plan to establish a trust fund that's specifically for computers. And the first 2 years would be expensive, but then we'd have that same amount would be divided over a 4-year cycle. So that every year it'd become an article that the residents would get used to seeing and know this is going to replace the device when we turn them over.
so the proposal would be for hardware, not for security services or
Correct.
personnel. I see.
Yep.
I see.
Student Chromebooks only.
Yeah,
Sorry?
Student Chromebooks only,
Okay.
Not staff?
correct.
correct.
Interesting.
So we'll have a presentation. Carol has been working on that, and she has investigated 4 options. We have one that we'll recommend, but you'll be able to see that there's 4 options.
Can I ask a question? How much are computers being used in the primary and elementary level with our children?
So they're used daily, but they're not used all day long. Just as the iPads in kindergarten, it's a station, it's a small component. There's the whole class instruction, and then the independent work might be this group is working with the teacher directly, this group is working collaboratively on something more hands-on, and this group is doing a follow-up, something, an online math reinforcer, something to that effect, but then there's movement. So it's not, they're on it all day long, they're on it throughout the day for a short period of time, depending on, on the daily schedule.
Okay. I just want to express, I was at the opening day, and I bring this up just because there was, the speaker, he put out there, what brings you anxiety? What are the things that you've been kind of concerned about since COVID? And one of the teachers shouted out, and I'm not going to remember exactly what was said because we were all calling out, right? Something to the effect of the fact that, we're supporting that which, we oppose. And it was basically this idea that, we're all concerned about social media, kids being on computers, kids being on devices, and then we have them on devices during the day. So I understand, we're in the 21st century and there's 21st century learning, but, nothing replaces this. And I feel like at some point the pendulum is going to swing because our kids are too much on these computers. We're going to come back to books. We're going to come back to pencils. I really hope that we do. But when I'm hearing there's so much one-to-one, especially on these levels, what you're describing sounds good, but I don't want us to move too far. I have nieces in schools across the country that they're basically on a computer all day. And that's one of the reasons why I left Las Vegas. I don't want that for my children here. So I just want to just kind of publicly express, I have a lot of trust in the school system, but I know that there's a lot of pressure to be 21st century, to have technology in the classroom, to have all the gadgets. And I have seen plenty of teachers my department chair in one of the schools, when she showed me her Prometheus board and everything, was like, oh, great, well, what are you using this for? And she goes, I'm going to be honest with you. The math department got theirs, and I felt I deserved one too, so I have it. I was like, is it changing your teaching? She's like, no. Now, that's not everybody, obviously, but I know it happens, and I just don't want us to turn into that. Because when you use it properly, the math people at that school, they were doing amazing things with it, But I just want us to be curricularly, so forth, thoughtful about this. Because I don't want my kids on the computers too much.
Absolutely, and I think that is something. So every Thursday, the data governance team meets and we review any new requests for software tools and applications. And one of the things that I look at is, from a curriculum standpoint, does this enhance?
Yes.
Does it do anything different? Because I don't want it to replace the teacher. And how are you going to use it? Because I don't want it to take over the lesson. And so there's really that justification for how there is a small enhancement, and these are the limited times that it will be used. Because I agree with you.
Okay, well, that's comforting. Thank you.
The other piece is when we went to this, the school board had those same concerns. So if you'd like to come in and observe how they're used, because I think it really changed the viewpoint of the school board, because they were very concerned, were we going to be on there all day?
That was me.
Yep.
I was absolutely gave the same speech without the credentials that Ann has, and went in and for a day and was shown multiple teachers, the integration specialist and multiple third grade, second grade teachers, and how the kids were using them. It's been some time though, so I would love for parents who have their kids here to go in and
There's
see.
certainly a place.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
no, if you'd like to do that, just let me know. We'll set it up with Paula and Candy. Because I think it's good, because you're going to be in the community, you're going to get those questions, and to see how it's still done, what I'll call from a center point of view. It's just, what we've done is we've added a technology center, but one group of 4 is still with the teacher, and the next group has, so I mean, it's still, I would say, somewhat traditional, and I think very, very effective, but I think that technology has enhanced certain elements of education.
And my kids are both up at Hughes now, and I've talked to them about it already starting the year, and Lorelai has been there for a couple of years now, and we talked about usage and appropriate usage, and we talk about it at home, and some benefit of it is not only are they getting to use the software tools and learn how to build things and be creative within that technical environment, it's also teaching them a heap of responsibility for electronic devices. You know, so that's actually just a separate thing where they have to be responsible to charge it, they have to bring it home, or they have to bring it back if they bring it home, things like that, and take care of their stuff. So as just a total side note, definitely appreciate that. I don't want my kids staring at a screen all year long either. But I think that what I've seen with my own kids has been awesome. And they've come home and they've shown me what they've built in Google Classroom, and they're like, look at this slideshow we made as one of this like extra project that we did, this research, and here's this, and I'm like, where were you researching? And they're like, here are all these sites that are acceptable, this is what our teacher told us we could do. And I'm just like, I'm old though, so we didn't learn that when I was, we were playing Oregon Trail during computer time.
I'm right there with you, Karen.
But yeah, it's,
It was fun game.
I
That was
just
a
would,
great
I'll
game.
add to
Dysentery.
what Carol just said, there are populations of students who have specific, very targeted needs that we would have to have extra staff to meet, whether it's sort of both ends of the bell curve of abilities. And in my particular case, when my kids were in this building, the digital devices allowed my one child, who's at both ends of the bell curve at the same time and still is in college, the ability to redo work, revisit work, whatever, that wasn't able to keep up in class, but also to do the advanced work that motivated him to come to school in the first place, because of the tablets, so there are things that the computer can do that really are micro targets. A lot of different kinds of kids, so, you know, in that respect, if it's a prosthetic as opposed to a displacement, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
They can be extremely helpful that way too.
Yeah, I second that. There's a lot of accessibility features
Accessibility,
that
exactly.
really helps. You know, my daughter in particular has, you know, fine and gross motor issues, and so being able to type is a big, you know, big thing for her. Really helps out. So, yeah, I actually have a couple questions too. So my understanding is that each child gets a dedicated device, right? The Chromebook. Is there a shelf life on those Chromebooks? What is this?
So that's the reason why we have to come up with a game plan, because due to COVID-related funds and grants that we received at one time, we purchased about 1,600 within, I don't know, 14, 16 months.
Right.
And so they're all going to reach end of life. FY26 is a huge year. I don't want to steal Logan's thunder. He has done incredible amounts of work and research and whatever, and has brilliant plans. But basically, we're not going to replace 1,600 Chromebooks across the SAU in 1 year. That's not, and then we're in that forever cycle.
Is that the end of the shelf life for the first Chromebooks that came in? Is 20?
Well, 24 is the first one, but that's a smaller number. So 26 is really a problem that we're
cliff.
trying to proactively plan for, so that we're not like.
Is that the 5th year? Is that one? I can't remember. When did we do it? 2020? 2021?
So between
21?
20 and 21.
Yeah, right.
depending on
So
the
they
months.
get like
So
5
years.
years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah, and
Waterfall.
I think 4 is more ideal as we're finding.
Well,
But-
my baby boy is working on his 8th year on his Chromebook. So
So then there are some other issues of that he will share, that sometimes they expire a little bit sooner than that, and so you have to know what you're purchasing. So we've learned a whole lot in the last few years, but now we
Yeah.
just have to be a little bit more proactive so that we don't face a difficult time to replace what we have.
On the topic of being proactive, with budgets. So I'm not going to pretend that I fully understand this at all, but I attended a training yesterday because it's crazy about these changes in adequacy, the needs grants, etc. The holding harmless grants, etc. So much jargon got thrown at me in 50 minutes, but it seems like that for at least this year and next year, we're going to be getting some increase, like what feels like an increase in adequacy, and then around 2026, it kind of just starts going away, if I understood this correctly, and it phases out over 10 years. Did I understand that? Because we weren't even, to ask questions was really kind of impossible, so I was just like,
Sitting
you know.
there at the training, you would have thought you were going to have an influx of money show up. That does not happen for every district.
Yes, and that was the other thing.
So our increase will be minimal,
Okay,
and we will just simply let that go to offset the tax rate.
Okay.
okay? I know,
It's not
Yeah.
enough to put in the.
you're talking, you know,
balance.
20 to 40,000.
Ah.
These are
Total.
programs designed for,
Right. We don't have the free and reduced population.
Sure.
One of the incentives is if your third graders aren't reading at grade level, you get extra funds to help them. Most of our third graders are reading at grade level, so we just don't see that. And it's
Sure.
also, you know, like a lot of times we don't qualify for a lot of the grants, even though we apply for them, because of when they look at our demographics, we don't meet their financial criteria.
Sure.
Yep.
And I don't want to, 20 to 40,000 doesn't seem like it's nothing, but the hoops you have to go through to access those funds would require another annual meeting, a second one, and so the financial costs involved in having everyone present
Right.
for that makes it so that it just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So that phasing out of money actually isn't affecting us at all
Really
because
affect
we're
us.
not really getting any money.
That's correct.
Why
And,
did I spend this?
and then
so now you know.
there's also,
And they can't get gaslit by people to promise
there's
you
also
things
two
that
lawsuits going
aren't
on
gonna happen.
that will probably be solved before 2026. So it'll be interesting to see how those weave their way through the courts and what the courts decide.
Well, the courts decided things 20 years ago that never happened, have still never happened,
That's
which is why
correct.
this lawsuit's there. This is a lawsuit trying to make the original findings happen.
Correct.
It's incredible, incredible.
So for us, we're basically just staying the course.
Correct,
For this.
correct.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that helps.
In terms of the maintenance expendable trust, we have an opening balance of $215,000. Our FY25 warrant will be approximately $125,000. Again, that'll maybe change slightly depending. One of the items that we are planning for, and this is something we've worked hard at over the last number of years, is we're going to need a new elevator at Hughes. So we're going to start putting about $36,000 away for the next 5 years, and then when that is gone, we'll be able to replace it. We have the front entrance security renovation in there. We're waiting to find out if the state's doing the security grants again. If they do, that'll go in there for that. And then we will be adding an exit lane on Drury Lane, so that if you're taking a right, you'll be able to take a right.
Oh, by the sign. Good.
Yeah, by the
good,
sign.
good.
So that will be,
That'll help a lot. Yeah.
that really will.
Kush is out there clapping somewhere.
Yes, yep. Yep. So that is round one. And you'll see items disappear. Items get added. We'll go through it. The majority of the work on the budget is actually done by the Hollis Budget Committee. That's actually their charge. They will set what they call guidance, and then it will be Kelly, Gina, Candy, Paula, and I who make us come in at guidance. And that has been very successful. And one of the things that they do that really allows us to have such a strong program, special education costs are outside of guidance. So in some districts, you might see those costs impacting regular education, because if they went up significantly with move-ins or something, whereas Hollis has always taken the approach that's outside of guidance, and guidance is about the regular ed budget and those pieces. They also work off the ed specs for class sizes. So, as we go through the budget, like I said, if those first grade numbers stay high, and we believe we can find a teacher, we may be adding a second teacher to that. So you'll see the budget back to you probably briefly in October. Any
So I
questions?
think our current sophomores in high school, or is it ninth graders, were second graders here when the same thing happened in the summer. All the numbers just started creeping, and you announced it, and September and October they kept creeping, and by the winter we had to hire paras.
Yeah.
And then we decided to add a teacher because the bubble continued to
Right.
expand.
Yeah.
And then we added that extra teacher the subsequent year and
Right.
rolled with those kids. And
Right. And for the new board members, we use NESDEC, which is a service. It's a New England Developmental Council. And we send all our information to them, and they send back the enrollment projections. And they've been pretty
okay.
accurate. The only place we always struggle is kindergarten, because we don't tend to be a town that students come from birth rate. We tend to be a town where students move in, so kindergarten is really difficult for us. But it's been going okay.
And just for, also for the newbies, we have 4 rounds of these budget cycles that
okay.
you'll see.
Okay.
And just because this is me, when you mentioned the geodes, you made a comment. I'm not sure if I'm sold on that yet. Is there another program that you're considering?
No, it's just
Or
more,
codes, I'm sorry.
to be honest with you, it's something that I'm educating myself on. Because to your point earlier that you made about technology and that, it's kind of the balancing act for me. I don't want everything to be
Yeah.
technology.
Is that what it is, a software?
No, they're books, but like handheld books. The
Great.
concern, though, is shoving too much at our staff. So we're going to be implementing a new math program next year, and there's so much around the science of reading right now, and we want to do all that great work, but we can't do everything in 1 year, and so we want to make sure we do it well and with a well thought out plan. So
That's good.
this is a supplemental piece for the reading program. So do we want to go with a supplement, or do we want to just slow and steady wins the race? You know, so it's we're just not sure. We're going to continue to do research. We have a great literacy team working on this. Started out about a year ago and is really doing really great work. But there's just so much that we want to do. We want to make sure we do right.
So I know that Foundations is used at least by first grade. What's
Mhm.
being used in kindergarten to get kids to learn to read and?
So Foundations is K1-2.
Oh, so it is.
Yep.
Okay.
And all of our teachers, well, last year they were all retrained. And then, of course, we have some new hires that will make sure that
Sure.
they are retrained. But
Okay.
just trying to balance the load.
I think that's smart. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's the budget update.
All right, moving on to deliberations.
In your packet, Kelly provided you a memo. The audit fieldwork has not been completed, so we don't yet know what the final available fund balance is for FY23. I will tell you that the audit went very, very well. There are no major pieces that we're aware of at this time, and that is also something that tends to go to the BudCom, not the school board. They take over that piece. Kelly's recommendation is for the board to approve retaining up to $180,000. This amount is 1.5% of the net assessment, where the Hollis School District has established 2.5 as the maximum that can be retained. The 180 has been the amount shown on all previous revenue and expense reports as the projected retained fund balance for FY24. If the board agrees with this recommendation, Kelly has provided you the motion that is there. I think this is a very solid number. One of the reasons we like it is because this is what we've told both the budget committee and the taxpayers throughout the year for the projection. So anything over and above that will just be returned to offset the tax rate. Any question on Kelly's memo?
So we should do the motion and then have discussion.
Yep, if you would.
I move to retain up to the sum of $180,000 of school fund balance from the FY23 school year as the end of year available funds allow.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
State law changed last year before, so we could go up to 5%. And prior to that, it had been 2.5%. So by retaining up to, it's important to always to notice it says up to 1.5%, that's still quite conservative. You're confident that's enough?
Yes, very much so.
Because the dollar isn't what it was.
Right. Well, I mean, the reason why I'm confident is because you have the contingency fund, you have the unretained fund balance, and you have the special ed trust fund. So there's 3 significant pieces there, and special ed gives me the ability, if I have somebody move in that was unexpected. We're already using the contingency this year for the teacher, which has always been the intended use through BudCom. So I'm very confident that this is a good sum of money, but at the same time, not keeping in excess to reduce the tax rate.
Further discussion on this item? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? 500. Okay, moving on to policy.
Okay, so first we have IHBA, which is the Programs for People with Disabilities. If you remember last time we talked about that basically there was just some grammar changes. Everybody accepted that. We have made no changes since that second reading.
Okay. Would you like to make the motion?
Sure. So I would like to, to accept the third reading and adopt policy IHBA, Programs for People with Disabilities.
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? It doesn't sound like there was any changes made. Okay. Okay. All in favor? Okay. All opposed? 0-0. Okay.
All right, so the next one takes us to EB, the safety program. This is our second reading today. We just cleaned up strike-throughs and from the last time that you saw it, there have been no changes to content since our meeting on August 2nd. So
Make the motion. Yeah.
we'll make the motion to accept the second reading of policy EB, Workplace Safety Program and Joint Loss Management Committee.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion or comments on this one? Okay. All in favor? Okay. 5-0-0.
Okay, that takes us to JLCJA, the Emergency Plan for Sports-Related Injuries. So this one today is our second reading. So we sent this to the school nurses to receive their input. We got that cleared. We also, if you were to look at the policy under C1 that's required by law, the hydration, we made sure that that was proper. We discussed C2. We don't have student athletes per se, so we were interpreting this as PE participation. We are waiting for a sports med form from Beth Williams. Does that come through? Do we have that? Okay.
From who, I'm sorry?
Beth Williams, that's
Oh,
what.
Beth Williams, thank you.
From the co-op.
Yep.
Just look at the form that they use.
Yep.
We anticipate we'll just use a version of that. And then E is newly required by law, and it's going to be included in the emergency response plan, which is being constructed right now. So, with that,
Yes, please make the
I
motion.
move to accept the second reading of policy JLCGA, Emergency Plan for Sports-Related Injuries and Additional Protocols for Athletes' Participation.
Second.
I had a question on this. Is the emergency response plan the same thing as the emergency operations plan?
It's an annex that's included within the EOP.
Okay.
But it's only included in schools that have 4th through 12th grade. So it would not be included in Hall's primary, but it would be required by law in Hall's upper elementary.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's separate.
And that is not due until October. So we are putting the finishing touches on that.
Okay.
So
And
we'll
the-
see this next month for final, do you think, or no?
I would imagine so, yeah. Okay.
And
That was not a pressure
Not the
question, by
emergency
the way.
action plan. So that would be part of our emergency operations plan. But this policy, we would like, it's
Yeah.
required by law, so we would like to do third and adopt for next.
Cool.
And
There's
the sports injury emergency action plan, is that the document that you said you were waiting for or something from
Mm-mm.
Beth?
No, the sports medical form.
Oh, okay.
So, like, for example, when a student is out of, like, an athlete, it refers to athletes,
Okay.
right? Like, talking about, people who are playing, like, an organized sport. Well, we don't have that
right.
in the lower schools. So we're taking what's been recommended to us, and we're
Mhm.
interpreting that as children participating in PE.
Okay.
We don't have a sports medical form, like, for a doctor
Right.
to write back. So we're going to look at what they have and
Okay.
make changes
It's really,
as appropriate.
it's really like the physical. So you need the physical
Yeah.
annually, but now the physical has certain, within the law,
Yeah.
requirements that have never been part of just your regular physical that you have.
Yeah.
Such as the sickle cell trait or
Yeah.
specifically identifying the C-spine. So, so now the state of New Hampshire has required this, and so we are going to just say that please have this form completed for the physical. You're going to be participating in sports, which we don't have in Hollis School District.
Okay.
But if we're referring to athletes, meaning kids participating in gym class, they have to participate in gym class, so therefore they would have to do the form.
No. So this is specific for
Team sports.
team sports. So it's a little bit strange
Okay.
that it's required for all schools. 4 to 12, because it applies to us and yet doesn't apply to us. So our interpretation of the plan is for our students who participate in sports within physical education. And so how do we respond if in PE class there was some type of emergency? And we need to have a plan for that. So we are putting the final touches on for Hollis Upper Elementary. But we don't have the same requirements for a physical to participate in an athletic sport, because we don't have them here.
So I think this is where I'm confused, maybe this is why Carol's confused. You're
Just
talking
went for a
about
brow.
the plan, which is a response to an injury, but you're also talking about a form which gives permissions, and we don't have teams for those permissions, but you're talking about getting it from Beth. I'm not connecting the dots because I don't know what
I'm
you're talking.
confused too, yeah.
So what do we need the form
So
that Beth Williams is working on for team participation
Just so that
as
families
part
can
of
have
this?
one
Does that make sense?
physical form
Mm-hmm.
as an SAU. And then it would be all inclusive, so that it wouldn't be one child needs this one, another child in the same family needs a different form. A lot of times you have your physical, you have your physical.
So you're coming up with a new form for the physical that includes this permission structure, even though that doesn't apply
It's
to
not
our
a permission
kids?
structure, it just includes a few additional components
Just the
to
stuff
the
that
medical
the
history.
doctors always add for physical.
In a sports
For
physical.
So we
sport,
just
yeah.
say,
It
so
just
the
makes
form
us
just basically
compliant.
says, yeah, my kid doesn't have any sickle cell
Yep.
issues, no spinal
Right.
injuries or concerns.
Yeah, and so,
So that's the
you-
form is the overall physical.
it's just the physical.
That's
And then
the form you're
that you
talking about
submit,
that you're waiting
but
for.
you're waiting,
And that's
you know,
separate
for March
from
or
this
whatever.
injury emergency plan.
correct, yep,
Those
they're
are
different
separate
components.
matters. Got it.
Okay, so the sports injury emergency action plan.
Is a plan of what to do
Right.
in the event of an injury.
Do we have, does such exist?
So that
That's
is doing the final amendments for Hughes. I was working on it today with Candy.
Okay.
So that will be ready, and that's an annex in the EOP.
Oh, okay.
That needs to be uploaded by mid-October to the state.
Okay, okay.
So by the time
we
we
are
see
in-
this for third reading, it should be in place?
Correct.
Okay,
Okay.
now.
Sorry for the confusion.
Yeah.
No
Well, it's
problem.
a little bit confusing because of who
It's
we are
required
and what
and
the
yet
law
not
states.
necessary.
Okay.
Right,
Well, I mean,
exactly.
for me, I'm asking because obviously I have elementary school kids, and those things that you're asking about are not normal components of their physicals. So now I'm trying to think of what is going to be the impact on the elementary school parents from Hughes that now have to basically get a second physical to
No, so-
answer the questions on the form.
So that's sort of where I was going with an SAU-wide form. We're not going to reject any that come to us. However, if you are, for Hollis, but if you want to participate in sports, when you hit the co-op and they're available, by law, some of these questions must be answered by the physician. So I would like to make that form available to everyone now because you might have your physical in October of 6th grade, but that's going to impact your 7th grade eligibility for fall
Solid point.
sports. So we're just
Okay.
trying to,
Thank you. That was all I
Give
needed to
people
hear
the
was
heads
that
up.
part.
You got it. Now we're clear.
I'm like, but why are we? Yeah.
So this is the first year, and we'll have to let it play for a year and see what else we need to do to communicate with families and stuff. Okay.
that works. Thank you for walking me through that.
sure.
All of us. Yeah.
Sorry,
Sorry
it's
for the
confusing.
confusion on that. Okay, all in favor? For second reading. Okay, all opposed? 500, motion passes.
Can I oppose it?
This is not the committee you need to oppose it to.
Oh,
Okay, here we go with wellness.
oh.
All right, so now we have the JLCF. This is the Wellness Committee document. So this is our first reading. There were legal updates that needed to be made, which we have done. So as you see, a lot has been struck and a lot has been added. This was all legally required.
This is all mandated by state law or federal law?
That's a great question. Gina,
Gina,
is
would
this
this
state?
start with the feds or does it start with the state?
I believe this started with federal regulations because of the school lunch program.
Lunch.
Okay, thank you.
So basically, this is everything required by law. We just fixed a few grammar and punctuation mistakes. We're keeping the title wellness policy. And section C of this is very newly required by law.
Could we have a motion and second just because this is,
I
Yeah,
figured
it's
there's
gonna
gonna be a
be
lot of
fun
questions and comments. Yeah, so let's do the motion and then we'll discuss it. Okay.
All right, so, I move to accept the first reading of policy JLCF, wellness as presented.
Second.
Okay. Okay, and maybe what we can do is let's go through this perhaps section by section. And let's go through section, I just am anticipating there's gonna be a lot of questions and comments. So let's start with section 1, the SEU 41 Wellness Committee. Do people have questions or comments on that section? Just that section to start.
I have a comment on the very first paragraph. I'm so sorry.
Go ahead.
I am concerned that the language, is this our language or RSA language, that first 2 paragraphs of the entire policy?
It is, most of this is the recommended policy from School Board Association.
Got it. So the district recognizes
sorry.
the importance of proper nutrition and developmentally appropriate physical activity as ways of promoting healthy lifestyles, minimizing childhood obesity, and preventing. So I have a big problem with saying the word preventing. We're in no position to assert that these change, the content of this paragraph prevents anything, and I feel like that's not at all reasonable. And I would like to suggest as ways of promoting healthy lifestyles which are believed to, let's say, minimize the risk of childhood obesity and other diet-related chronic diseases.
I like it.
Does that make sense?
Promoting health and minimizing and preventing. So basically, you just want to strike the word preventing? Did I catch
Well,
that?
and then
Well,
add
no,
the
I
risk
want
of.
as risk
The
of, as
risk
ways
of.
of promoting healthy lifestyles which are believed to minimize the risk of developing childhood obesity and other diet-related chronic diseases. Is just my suggestion.
And I wholly agree.
Great. Appreciate that, for sure.
Same.
Okay. Sorry, now moving down to section 1.
Sorry, this is a monster, this thing.
I just, so I guess
Oh,
that.
wait, stop, so sorry.
Oh, so
Amy,
go ahead,
I beg
go
your
ahead, go,
pardon.
go.
I have a humongous problem with the word beliefs in that last sentence of the first paragraph. I promise I'm not going to do this through the whole thing.
Okay.
It is therefore the goal of the district that the learning environment positively influences a student's understanding, beliefs, and habits. I'm so sorry, I can't vote for something that says beliefs. So could we say it is therefore the goal of the district that the learning environment positively influences a student's understanding and habits as they relate to good nutrition and physical activity?
Yes. Agree again.
Okay.
Anything on the following paragraph? I'm just gonna go paragraph by paragraph. Okay.
Any thoughts on, because it is so lengthy, so much of the content is not actually different. It doesn't actually change our practice. The only New Hampshire state legal update was with water bottles, and we cannot say that certain water bottles are not legal in the classroom. Some districts started to
Say no glass.
say no,
BPA.
like
The
the ones you
BPA?
can't see
Oh,
through
oh,
because of what might be inside. But we didn't have that.
You know exactly what we're saying.
In our district, so it didn't really apply to us, but we do need to update it. I'm just wondering if, because it's not an easy line by line, you see this strike through, if we take a look at first read and then provide a lot of feedback to the policy committee offline.
Okay.
Because
Is that how you prefer to do it?
why?
Okay.
There's just so much here.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
can I just ask about that second paragraph, the word commercial, while minimizing commercial distractions? Could you tell me what that means to convey? I don't even know what that means.
Where are you?
Sorry, second paragraph of the opening. This policy
Oh.
outlines blah, blah, blah. Second line, healthy eating, physical activity throughout the school day while minimizing commercial distractions.
see.
What is that supposed to mean?
Well, I would interpret that to mean the fact that you're not supposed to have, like, different kind of, like, vendors competing with the school selling food that has the regulations of.
As a parent, I wouldn't have any idea what that means, so I
Same.
would ask.
Yeah.
I just put it, for me, I'd like that better understood.
Okay.
And as for this giant wellness committee that includes members, students and members of the public and all of it, that's new, yes?
No.
No? With students? How do I not know about that? Okay.
The students are older students.
Obviously, yeah, good. Okay.
But we've had it for as long as I've been in this role.
You know, we've had to have it.
But
Yeah.
no one on this board has ever participated.
We
that I
have
know.
someone from two people from the SEU governing board, I think, are elected to the wellness committee.
Right, but the Hollis board doesn't have members, right?
No, just,
No, they could if they were,
Say it again?
they could be from Hollis and the SAU.
right.
But right now, they're not.
Did I misread this, that every district board has to have members on this committee?
I
No, the
think,
policy is subject to
SAU
each board's
41
approval.
wellness.
Okay, great.
I have a quick question about the very first line of this. It says the superintendent, comma, in consultation with the business administrator or their designee, comma, will facilitate development. So you're saying the business administrator's designee or the superintendent's?
Business administrator's designee.
Mhm.
Okay.
The committee.
Everywhere else it talks about a superintendent's designee, so I just wanted to make sure those weren't flipped.
I think to Gina's point in this one, because we're going through this in multiple districts, if you could just email us offline, specific to section, the word that concerns you, whatever it is, because I think it'll really help policy, because this is just one of those, covers everything.
and has this been approved by other districts, or is everyone in the
Everyone's in
same
the same boat.
boat as we are?
Yep.
Okay, and so if a change is made at the co-op, might that flow through to other districts?
Ideally, it would.
Right.
But since we're doing it at the same time, then not
Okay,
necessarily.
okay.
Do you want it to?
It makes it easier,
easier.
but at
Well,
the
that's what
same
I'm saying.
time,
Is there a way for us to coordinate that?
Well, sometimes we
A little
do,
bit
right?
better.
Sometimes we wait for these to go through other districts before they come to us.
What is our urgency of getting this one through policy?
So it's supposed to be in place already. But we had a little delay without our policy database being up. You've heard about that?
I heard nothing. I just about all knowledge.
It's what, 8 months of it being down, but you guys rescued it. So Andy, before I can even ask the questions offline, I just want to clarify that I see now the SAU 41 Wellness Committee should represent each school, blah, 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 and then it says 2 school board members, and you're interpreting that as 2 SAU school board members,
Yep.
as opposed to 2 from each district.
correct.
Got it, that makes sense. That limits the noise. Okay.
So would we
Sorry,
just
20
do the, accept the reading with the understanding that we'll send?
Yeah,
And should we just send them to you guys?
that'd be great.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody's okay with handling it that way? Okay, so then all in favor of accepting the first reading of this policy? Okay. All opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay. Moving on to EHB.
And this EHB, this is our first reading. It has already gone through the co-op. So basically, the language that you're looking at mirrors their language to keep the policies consistent and compliant.
When was it approved by them? Oh, sorry. Never mind. We're not going to talk until we do a motion.
Sorry. So I move to accept this first reading of policy EHB, data record retention and destruction, as presented.
Second.
Okay. And now your question.
So the, this policy, we had a federal grant audit in the co-op, and we received some feedback, one of which was to enhance our EHB policy. You can see it was very short before. The superintendent will develop procedures and for record retention. They wanted it much more spelled out. They gave us a couple of options. The co-op went with this version, which was another school district, because it identified specifics without being 10 pages of itemized specifics, because that's all in the data retention procedure that we have. Like this record we keep for 30 years, this record we keep forever. And so we didn't necessarily want all of that in the policy, but we wanted to make sure that we met the requirement by the federal government. So this meets the requirement. It was approved, I think it went final approval either in the June or July meeting.
The co-op.
The co-op, yes.
So the question I have has to do with when a student reaches their 18th birthday, which I know doesn't give them full adult rights over their school, over their school-related stuff if they're still a student. But I'm 18, I leave school, I'm done with school one way or another. This language makes me ask, what if there's a conflict between the parents and the student as to what they want done with the records?
Are you looking at A1?
A1, and I marked all this up and then the computer crashed, so I don't have my markups. And also, I mean, all of that stuff there is just, there could be a conflict between an adult student who, and also it says upon graduation, what about kids who do, high school equivalency? What about kids who don't do any of that? When the language says graduation, does that mean it doesn't apply to students who don't technically graduate? So I just wonder if the language is too specific or leaves room for a legal conflict between parents and their students as to what happens as to what is wanted, And then what about parents? It says parents, guardians. What if there's multiple households who have that kind of authority and there's I just wonder how does this policy address that, or does that become a legal matter that doesn't need to be addressed by the policy?
So I think, but I will get clarification. I believe the answer lies in the fact if there's a guardian, a legal guardian.
Oh, that's definitive already, is what you're saying?
Yes.
I see.
That makes a decision for the individual who may be 19 or 20 or 26 through the 30th birthday.
It says
Number
his or
2,
her
it doesn't.
parents may request in writing that the district destroy the student's special education records, including any final I'm just picturing a scenario where parents or guardians request that and the student has adult rights. It doesn't say, I don't know if that's so important or not, but it
Well,
just.
2 and 3 are the same kind of issue, because
Right,
it says
right.
to the parent/guardian
Right.
or the adult student may at
Right.
any time.
Exactly.
So
I feel like the
agree
whole
with her.
thing is leaving some room for, and I don't know how important that is to be in policy. Maybe there just needs to be some kind of escape clause that says with exceptions for legal whatever, or, legal disputes or something. It just seemed like there was
I will seek guidance from legal, but I do believe that we request either the student or demonstrate that there has been an appointed guardian.
perhaps the word appointed would be appropriate. Again, I come at it from, I'm the ignorant parent reading policies and thinking I have understanding of the policies because I think I'm smart and I think I know how to read English, but really legally this means something slightly different, and it just, sometimes a single word or a phrase could give better clarity, that's all.
Absolutely valid.
Yeah.
So we ask maybe when we consult with legal on this, for example, is there that ambiguity intentionally because it might depend on the student's disability that they may not be able to make the decision?
So if they're not able
themselves?
to make the decision, then they would have most likely an appointed
appointed
guardian.
guardian.
So I think it's a very valid question. And I was just referring back to what we do, but first, as opposed to reading this and just trying to see it from a different lens, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to just see if we need to make some adjustments to the
It
language.
could be just a word,
Yep.
appointed guardian might make it all, or whatever.
Maybe I missed it, but obviously there's a large focus on the special education records. It mentions litigation hold and right to know request, which are all, falling in legal. And then it goes into the electronic records, but it doesn't say what our regular schedule is to get rid of them. And then just a second portion of this is in the last one, in E, retention period schedule. Now I lost the line. All the underlining is making me not be able to read.
Makes it hard.
It talks about something below. If you find the word
Right,
below.
right, exactly.
But there's nothing below.
That's
Below
right,
are the
that's
legal
right. Where is it?
references.
Right, or
Oh,
there
at the
says here,
bottom.
Note regarding
Yeah.
records relating to federal
That's right.
funds, items marked with asterisks below.
Right,
Yeah, there it is.
exactly.
I think there might be a second mention of
There is a
below
second
as
mention,
well.
and I had that marked too, good catch.
There's nothing marked with an asterisk, gotcha, okay.
Yeah, there it is. Therefore, to the extent that the
Yep.
below schedule or other
Exactly.
authorities suggest that a purchase order with accompanying documentation may be
Oh,
mutually
that's,
agreed.
I'm sorry, that is from EHBR, the schedule, which is not part of the policy. So below doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Right, that should
It's
be
just
deleted.
It should
Right.
be
So those
referencing
two-
EHBR.
Okay, so those two references, the items marked below with asterisk and the below schedule portion would just need to be
Thank you.
ousted, of course.
So there's
But-
not going to be an appendix R.
There, we have one, yes. It's just
It
not
still
part
exists.
of the policy.
So should it be deleted, or should it just say see appendix EHB-R? If we're gonna have the appendix as part of our policies, then rather than delete.
can.
Yeah, if it's relevant.
Well, I think what we've talked about in the past with policy stuff is rather than trying to reiterate pieces of it somewhere else, then we lose track of if the permanent one is over here. We should always just refer to that one that gets updated versus possibly
Right, but
missing
if
an
we're gonna
update.
have an R, which is the reference, then we need, I think, link, anyway, you get it.
Yeah.
And I get your point. Excellent.
So then before the whole comment about below,
Mm-hmm.
I was asking about the overall retention policy for a regular student with regular records that don't fall into some of these other categories. What
It's
is
all
that?
in EHBR.
So that's where that was located. Okay.
Everything from employment records to town report, like you name it, is pages and pages
Okay.
of what we are legally required to do, and how long we keep everything, where it's stored, who's responsible for the destruction of.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was what just threw me off.
Okay.
That was indicating that. So I would say just a paragraph saying to get these details about these things, go to this
Okay.
policy with a link. And that way, as you update that policy, that link stays the same and you don't have to worry about updating this one at the same time. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the underline sure just changes.
But it's a best way to,
Any other discussion on EHB? All right, all in favor of approving the first reading? All opposed?
Policy committee, congratulations on wrangling this stuff. What a bear.
Well
Yes,
done.
Well done. Do we need a
We do
non-public
not.
tonight? We do not. All right, so do I have a?
I move to adjourn.
I second.
Okay. We are adjourned.
Are we?
All
Did
in
we vote?
favor, all in favor, all in favor, 500. We are adjourned at 7:32.
Great work, everybody.
Sonic,
Nice